Hi everyone, welcome to another week on the Brush by Brandy YouTube channel. This week we're going to work on this piece that's behind me, and this one I actually got in a set. I also did the matching vanity, but I did that in a separate finish. You guys can find that one already up on my YouTube channel. And this one has a couple repairs that it needs, so I'm going to show you how to go through those repairs. I've got big plans for this. I think I'm going to use some foils on this and a beautiful paint blend. We're going to add a lot of pops of color on this one. It's got gorgeous details and I really want to accentuate them with the paint finish. So I hope that I do it justice, you guys. But stick around and let's see where this one goes. Let's get started. Here's where I started on this piece of furniture. It's actually beautiful. It does need a few small repairs, but overall it's in really good shape. I got this in a set with the matching vanity. Here is the vision sheet that I created for this. It all kind of revolved around this foil from Artistic Painting Studios. That's where I'm going to pull my color inspiration from. I started out by removing all this beautiful old hardware. I'm going to soak this in vinegar and water to clean it, and we'll come back to that later. Next, I'm going to give this piece a thorough cleaning using Green East Furniture Cleaner, and I'm going to make sure to get into all those details. This is where I usually notice when repairs need to be made. I found this little piece of molding was missing, but there are some good ones on the piece that I'm going to copy to make a duplicate of it. This is a synthetic modeling clay from Alumilite, the company that makes amazing casting resin, and it doesn't dry out. I just store this in a Ziploc baggie. I'm going to take a little piece of the clay and mold it over my good piece of molding. I use a flat bottom to create a flat bottom on this so that when I set it on a surface to go ahead and pour resin into it, it's not lopsided on the base. Next, I'm going to mix up my amazing casting resin. I mix equal parts of A and B, and I need just a tiny bit of resin to mix this little tiny detail that's missing from my piece of furniture. This is a great way that you can copy just about any missing piece of molding that you might need for your furniture piece. After about 10 minutes, I come back and I'm able to flex my clay around that resin and pop out these two details that I was missing. I fold that clay back up, it goes back onto the block, and I can use this over and over. This stuff is really amazing to have. I glued those details on using Titebond Quick and Thick, and now it's time to add some primer to this piece. This is a really old piece of furniture which can have a tendency to bleed, and that is when the oils from the wood can seep through my paint over time and discolor my finishes. So I'm going to add 2 coats of Wise-Owl primer in light gray. Now it's time to go ahead and add this beautiful foil from Artistic Painting Studios. I'm going to add this to the top drawers of this piece, and this first one has some moldings on it. This was a little bit of a challenge to work the foil around the moldings. I'm applying my foil right over the top of my primer. That light gray is going to make these colors on the foil look really nice and saturated. I started out by applying my foil adhesive, also from Artistic Painting Studios. I let that set up overnight, and then I come back and it's got a tack to it, and I'm able to put the foil right over the top, and just using a nylon brush, I brush the foil down into the tacky adhesive, and then I'm going to pull back the clear backing sheet, and it's going to leave that foil design. These foils are amazing. They come in a ton of different designs. This particular one has a pattern to it, but they do come in all kinds of metallic finishes. Even this foil has a little bit of a metallic shimmer to it that's really pretty in the light. I decided to also go ahead and wrap this foil onto the sides of my piece. So let's come over and apply the same foil onto this side. I learned a lot of things about applying foils, and one of them is they're much easier on overall flat surfaces. This flat side was much easier than trying to do the details on the front. I also learned to definitely not rush the glue process. So when you put that adhesive on underneath your foils, you want to let that set up. And once it reaches that point of tack, it's never going to be any less tacky. So you can leave it overnight or come back a couple days later if you want to. But definitely it's worth waiting for that glue to fully set up. If you try to rush the process, you end up messing up the foils. So definitely wait for your glue to fully set up before you apply your foil into it. I also tried out 3 different nylon brushes. I tried out a softer nail brush. I ended up liking a little bit of a firmer brush for this. The other thing I was really grateful for is Jen at Artistic Painting Studios knew that this is a pattern foil and that I would need a little bit of excess to match up patterns on this. So when you're using a design that doesn't have a pattern match, you don't often need that excess, but when you need a pattern match, make sure to order a little bit of extra for your foil. It looks a little bit rough around the edges of my foil right now, but that's going to get fixed later. I had a few spots on the sides that I needed to sand a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and fix that. I also wanted to add a piece of would you bend trim underneath the foil. That's because I plan to have the foil on the top of the side of this piece, and then down below it's going to have a paint finish, and this would you bend trim is going to be a nice border that gives me a clean line of delineation where the foil stops and the paint finish is going to start. So I heat up this would you bend trim using my heat gun, and I'm going to apply it using some Titebond Quick and Thick. Once I've got it held up to my piece, I'm going to go ahead and heat it a little bit again so that I can cut it to exactly the right length. Now that I've got my piece cut to just the perfect dimensions, I'm going to go ahead and seat this onto my piece. I will heat it again, and adding heat when it's on my piece allows it to seat right into the furniture so that you can't tell that it's not an original piece of this furniture. I was very careful with my heat gun to make sure that I don't get too close to that foil because I don't want to cause any bubbling in my primer or my foil. I wipe away all the extra adhesive and let that dry, and now it's time to work on my paint finish. I needed to conceptualize some different colors with this one. I knew I wanted to pull my inspiration from the colors in that foil, so I tried 3 different paint combinations and I ended up liking this third one the best. This is often the stage when I'm making decisions about how I want to continue with the piece. I'm using Wiesel paint on this one, and this first color that I'm using is a mix of Wiesel black and chocolate. I just added a little bit of chocolate to sort of dull the black so that it's a deep, deep, rich brown. I'm going to apply it over this piece of molding that I added just using an artist brush. Now it's time to move on to the lower section of this side. So I'm going to add my dark brown. Let's call this, I don't know, it's kind of a dark chocolate color. So we'll call this dark chocolate. And I'm going to apply this around the edges of the furniture piece, and then I'm going to come back and fill in the inside. But this first part is going to sort of form out the border. I'm just applying this using my Klingon brush. This is the S50 brush that I love for laying a coat of paint on. I'm going to use a brush for each color and then a dry neutral brush that I'll pull out in just a little bit to work these colors together. With this dark chocolate framed out around the outer edges, I'm going to apply a color called Native Clay into the center. This is a beautiful color, and I think paired with this dark chocolate color, it creates this really rich color combination that I absolutely fell in love with. I'm also applying this using another Klingon S50 brush, and I'm going to brush that right into the center. This is just my first coat of paint, and I don't expect to fully cover up that primer. I just want to get my basic color layout decided. It's the second coat when this blend is really going to come together, and I'm really going to perfect the blending. So right now I'm just trying to get my basic color layout decided and a basic coat of paint on with as much coverage as I can possibly get, but it's very normal to not get full coverage over the primer in my first coat. With those colors roughly blended together, I do have a third color for this, and it might surprise you a little bit, but my third color is actually Dijon from Wiesel Paint, and this is just going to be a little bright gold highlight in the center. I'm going to blend it out into that native clay as much as I possibly can, but it just added the perfect amount of color. There is a little bit of gold tones in that foil, and this really brings them out. Wait till you see this color combination on the front of the piece. That's kind of where it all comes together. All right, let's turn this piece, and my first coat has dried on the front of this piece, and now I'm going to go ahead and blend out a second coat on this. I'm going to basically repeat the same process that you just saw me do on the side. I'm going to frame it out in that dark chocolate blend, put a little bit of the native clay in the middle, and then a highlight of that Dijon. With my colors all laid out, you might have noticed I brought out a different brush for this blending part, and this is the B10 brush from Klingon. I love this brush for blending, especially over wide open spaces like this front is. This B10 brush is nice and wide and it's fluffy, and it blends colors together beautifully. I'm going to lightly mist the paint with water anytime I feel like it's getting a little bit sticky, and I'm just going to work these colors together. It's going to take me a little bit of time. It's very normal that I go back and forth over the same colors again and again to work them together, keeping the paint wet until I like the final look. I'm starting around the outside, and I'm going to work that dark chocolate mix and the native clay together first, and then I'm going to start brushing it straight through the center. I do lay off the brush onto a rag to keep it from getting too muddy because it will have a tendency to pick up some paint. I don't do this blending process until my second coat because this brush can tend to pull some paint if I try to do this on my first coat. With my paint finish complete, it's now time to add some details, and I want to keep it pretty simple because the focal point is on that foil. I'm just going to use some gilding wax from Redesign with Prima. This color is called Eternal, and it's a nice rich antique gold that I'm going to accentuate some of these moldings with. I also added one of the new molds from Redesign with Prima to the center of this piece. It's called Salon de la Belle Epoque, and it was the perfect emblem to sort of accentuate the front of this furniture piece. I love this mold. I painted it in a bronze color and then added a little bit of gold over the top, and it's just the right accent. It's staging day. I staged with some gold frames to tie into that cleaned hardware that cleaned up to a beautiful gold. What do you guys think? I'm thoroughly enjoying learning more about foils. Thank you to Artistic Painting Studios for all your help on this one. You guys can find links for everything I use in the description for this post. You can find more Brush by Brandy on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube, and on my website at brushbybrandy.com. Don't forget to click that subscribe button.